Okay, so good afternoon. I am Anto. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon as we try and figure out the future for smarter buildings. It's really good to have you with us today. In case you're wondering who we are, our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org, so head over there. And just a reminder that in this call, in this hour, views are personal, not of any company or organization. Keep that in mind. And let's make this interactive and using the Zoom chat as we always do. And if you want anything on this slide deck, it is also on mondaylive.org right there on the homepage. So this being March, this is the last Monday in March. We have been talking about governance, so we're going to continue that today for one last time. And our agenda today is we'll do our normal news and trends and chit chat, and then talk about governance. And we will really want to talk about the different types and flavors of governance, because not all governance is the same. So looking forward to that. And then the discussion. But before we do that, I'm going to hand it over to Ken Sinclair for an update from Automated Buildings. Ken, over to you.
Thanks, Anto. As you can see, I've started with the flavor of flavors, so that you could even spell that word differently. So there you go. Over on the left-hand top corner there is a post that Kimon did when he went to scale. And I just wanted to quote there. Governance decides who controls the system. Open isn't just code, and it's how it's governed. Who defines trust, who sets the rules, and who holds the power. Just in that little caption is a lot of what we're doing here. And governance is, I hadn't really thought about it, but it is a lot what we do and how we act. And we're getting the power to basically apply that. Below that is a summary of last week's session, the biodegradable BMS. I think that's an interesting twist. That turned out to be a good summary. The one below that is Anto's one, and I forgot to change it. That's the 2 of 3, and the 3 of 3 is now on the cover of automatedbuildings.com. So now the whole series has been exposed. And up at the top there is the missing binding layer, which is the first one. That's 1 of 1. So this one has 2 of 3, and 3 of 3 is on the cover of Automated Buildings. So you can read the whole series. Below that, we have ASHRAE, ANSI, an ACCA, an AHR, all these layers of what they do, and they basically all need the evidence gap. This is one that Gregory has been promoting a lot, having a lot of posts, and he feels that all of this data that we're collecting needs to be creating evidence and histories of how the building is performing. And I think he's on to something. One thing is that this is going to be the way that we're going to prove that AI is improving, and also improve or basically validate the value of AI. The governance theme, as we said, has been a really good one, and this is a link to governance of data, but data infrastructure. And again, there's a link down there about more of the governance. He's coming in mini articles, which is great, and that's what the flavor of it is all about. Then over in the middle there, we've got a link to a post that Kimon made, and there's some great information there, and he links to well, actually the next one, the meaning of asset intelligence, and he has a new one right on the cover of Automated Buildings, just came on hours ago. So all of them are good. They've all got videos in them, which if you don't have time to watch the video, just click on it and treat it as a podcast, because there's a good discussion and he explains well. what it is he's talking about. We've actually even written an article using Kelly is using AI and writing an article about his article because I think some of this stuff is getting so complex that we actually have to spin the concept of providing English subtitles. This is, if you've been following Monday Live, you're probably starting to talk funny like the rest of us, and I think we need to kind of create a link back to the common folks that haven't got their heads so far into what's going on. There's down at the very bottom there, Mastering HVAC Controls. That's an article by Thomas. He's getting a lot of reads. He's basically going at how is all of these changes, how is it affecting the technicians and how we operate our buildings. It's good insight, well read, gets a lot of reads. The next one to that is the BACnet when you start going into multi-complex and you start moving BACnet through the clouds. There's some good articles and good standards there provided by one of our sponsors. Over there, we've got our usual Monday Live automated buildings, C4SB. I'm posting so much stuff that it's worthwhile to just follow me and you don't have to agree with everything, but there's a lot of stuff flying by, so it's good to just see what's going on. I just mentioned to Anto that probably in the last 3 months we've actually increased our followers by about 300 or something, which is kind of amazing. So we are getting a much greater penetration. And more people are interested in what we're doing. Of course, our free education sessions are all online, and we're starting to finish those up, that we're providing summaries for them. Niagara Summit is on this week, I think. Yeah, that's correct. And there's a lot
Next
of
week.
folks in our industry that are involved, and a lot of our sponsors. And at the bottom of that, Suha reminds us the power of storytelling. And I think that's a really important message to automated buildings and the contributing editors of automated buildings, is that they are the thought leaders and they're changing our industry rapidly. And actually, that was noted in both of Kimon's last articles, that he's actually creating history in his articles. He's doing stuff that's never been done before, that I'm sure we're all going to look back in. It used to be we'd look back in a few years, but in this case, at the speed that AI is moving, we'll look back in a couple of months to see how that all came to pass. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you. I believe Niagara Summit is next week, not this week. It
Oh,
starts on the
okay.
7th.
Okay. Click
But it's
on.
worth, somebody should check up and just confirm that.
Okay. I'll do
That's
that.
great. Thank you, Ken. This slide is getting more and more condensed and more full of stuff.
I'm putting layers on
Maybe
it.
maybe eventually you'll need a whole hour to read all of this, and then we'll have a 2-hour Monday Live. But anyway, we're not going to do that. But over to Rick. What's going on, Rick?
Well, we've been using this slide to sort of show the progression of the different working groups, and we've talked a lot about the things that are kind of in the middle of the slide, and kind of drawing attention to what's on the right-hand side, and kind of in terms of the new working groups and interest groups. And I just want to bring a little attention to this, what's going to be called an open controls interest group, if I could say it. Apologize. Open controls interest group. And under that interest group, there will be several different potential projects. And uh, we're going to be revealing what some of those are here in the coming days and weeks. The second one on that in that little bullet list over there, the starred bullet list, is the UDMI working group. And that one is progressing to where we've got a charter, and we've got governance structure that's being proposed. And it looks like the what was formerly a standalone working group that was sort of being led by Google and Delta and Distech and a few other industry players. That'll become a C4SB working group over the next some number of weeks. And then the OpenUSD and the audiovisual interest group and the open buildings graph working groups are still taking shape. Anybody who's got any curiosity about any of those acronyms or ideas, feel free to contact me or any other people that you know that are working on these, and we'll try and lead you to where the time slots are that these different groups are assembling. If we go to the next slide, I wanted to bring also a little bit of attention to a couple things. Oh, there's a logo missing. Oh darn! I just added a, let's see, refresh. There it is. How about that in real time? I wanted to bring attention to on the right side of the slide is something we talked about last week, which is this explainer video of UDMI, and I mentioned it a minute ago. It's a new working group inside of C4SB. It's a pretty interesting technology for bringing universal device management interface to IoT devices mostly. And we're going to have an educational session the timing of that will be announced probably next week, where I think the title of it's going to be something like UDMI for people who understand BACnet. Now, if that isn't an exciting title for a webinar, a must-see TV, I don't know whatever would be. But this tutorial on what is UDMI and what does it mean to the industry is a good video to check out if y'all have nothing better to do. Another on the top left, the CSI, the link to the CSI event that's tomorrow is going to be really interesting for our industry, in that CSI is Construction Specifications Institute, and they're changing how specifications and the documentation and how people, architects, engineers, owners, all use the specifying process. That's going through a major change. And tomorrow there is a town hall webinar for everybody to learn what the new changes to CSI are. Now, how does that impact us? Is that, everything we do, we need to be able to specify somehow. And we've got a working group in C4SB that is the 2525 working group that references the 50 divisions that are described by CSI. And for anybody who's, that's part of their life, this town hall that's tomorrow could be interesting to sign up for and attend. And then the last thing got the logo that appeared magically just about 30 seconds ago is that we are going to be having C4SB town halls on a regular or irregular basis, but we're going to schedule them for the first Thursday, not this Thursday, but starting in May, I think 5/7, May 7th. Terrible day for me it's a wedding anniversary. But on the 7th of May will be the first town hall, C4SB town hall that we'll have, and we'll do general updates on all the different working groups, and hopefully have guests that'll do a little bit of technology briefs as part of those sessions. So that's the C4SB update.
So Anno was asking a question about registration. I think for the CSI, you do have to register because I have done that. But for the town hall, I don't think you do, right?
Chat hall.
There'll be a link that
Yeah.
we'll have, and we'll promote that on Monday Live.
And we'll do everything possible to make it easy for people to attend.
Cool.
Good. Thank you, Rick. All right. So from me, I'm just going to highlight that article that I published that now has 3 parts, and all the 3 links are right here. That will likely take you to the 3 of them. It's basically a narrative of what has been going on, or what is going on at the PAE project. So you've heard quite a bit about that. So head over to read this, in addition to obviously all the material that Kimon has been putting up. So it's all great. There's a lot of learning from this project. Any other thoughts anyone want to bring up?
I have a slide that I added after this event. If you can
That one
So
there.
so there's actually refresh once more because I think I updated it. Real-time presentations. So there's several events coming up. The most immediate one is next month in Washington, D.C. through the AON. There's a whole series. This is getting bigger and bigger, actually. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it myself, but it's 4 days of AI and interfacing with government agencies. It looks pretty interesting. A lot of similar topics that we've been circling around here. How do you get data moving between systems? How to use AI? Governance, obviously. And then SimBuild in Minneapolis coming up in May with PAE and NIST, Paris 2, and myself will be presenting there. And then there's a whole series of other green build events, both virtual and in person in October, that are also centered around a lot of the work that we've been doing here with PAE. And I don't have a slide for it, but it came up in the first slide with Ken that we've kind of reached a milestone on the semantic bridge, creating turtle files from BIM, and the PAE building is next, and that we moved it online. It's still in development environment, but it was kind of a milestone for us. So we're doing it's pretty interesting what's possible when we start getting a lot of people collaborating with that. That QR code goes to the Ashley Leadership Network. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Kimon. Anything else from anyone else?
Can Kimon give us a quick description of what a turtle file is?
Yeah, it basically creates the triplets, the RDF that describes I'm an air handling unit. I need electricity from here. I provide air to this zone. And it's an open standard format that you can share with other tools, which is the intent of the C4SB PAE project as well. How do we keep the connections and data neutral? So it doesn't matter which application you're using. And maybe one more plug for that. We still are looking for other collaborators in that, because now that we have an open source file, who else can do stuff with it? So we have it posted on the repo and all that. So there's a lot of testing going around that with PAE and others.
Is turtle an acronym, or is it just
Uh,
fun name?
TTL.
It's
TTL, yeah.
TTL.
TTL is the actual formal name, and it's pronounced turtle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've heard of
Yeah, like-
TTL, not just never heard it pronounced.
It's
I
the
call it
official, it's the official file format of RDF and knowledge graphs, and just it's everywhere. And it's what we're trying to have everybody learn is that turtle files are a fundamental of brick, rec, 223, BACnet to RDF creates a TTL file. It's a database file type that is the future of structured. I would say structured data, but you don't want to use the word structured relative to data, but it's where modern data architectures are going, and it's just been this like secret for 20 years, which I don't understand why, but it's really becoming a fundamental part of where we're seeing data architectures go and data sources go as a common denominator. So it's a really big part of what we're doing of trying to move everything to knowledge graphs. The knowledge graphs create a file that is a TTL file. And then that's how things can be interoperable.
Yeah.
In
And-
my goal to bring English language to Monday Live, is there someone that could actually create a glossary or something to
Yeah,
that'd be useful.
Yeah.
I actually asked ChatGPT to create a 6th grade version, maybe I should have said 3rd grade version, of explaining the difference between a turtle file and the current data architectures. Needs a little bit of refinement, but that's one of the things we want to try and publish is just a sort of a beginner's guide to understand where the future of data architectures, where they are, not where they're going, where they are now. And that is TTL files are a big part of that.
Will that land on the C4SB site?
And hopefully it's in some article that you can, that'll be on automated buildings, yes.
Good.
Some of it's already on automated buildings. Pieces of it, I've been trying to explain pieces of it. It's hard to explain, but if you break it down, it's like the wiring diagram, but with meaning in it. has information in that package that says I'm an air handling unit, I connect to these things. And from the technical side in AI, the aha moment for us was when Rick introduced us to this. First, we were kind of resistant. Do we want to do this RDF? But once we started building, it became clear as day that it pulls out the complexity of a very detailed BIM or digital twin in a format that you can ask questions to. It's very efficient, can be very dense, but it doesn't have all the baggage of the 3D and the digital twin world that you see out there. But we're putting it, that's what the bridge is about. We're bridging between the geometry model and the RDF, so you can query both and say, I am here, what's this thing doing, where it's connected to, what's it wired to, what impact will it have? So it's that kind of conversation you can have with it. And AI loves it too.
Okay, we need to move on. So let's get back to governance. And the topic for today is flavors of governance. Nice, fun image that ChatGPT created. So what I've put together is just one slide just to sort of frame this conversation. And it sort of starts with this guy, we're just going to call him Joe, for want of a better name. And let's think about the governance that impacts him, right? So, and this is kind of obviously a proxy for pretty much any one of us. We all live in a home, so I suspect that most homes have some form of informal governance. You know, it's things like, you know, the trash days and who does what in the house and all that kind of stuff. So there is a form of very loose governance in all of our homes. But we live in a city somewhere. So this guy, Joe, lives in Raleigh, and Raleigh is in a county, which is in a state, which is in a country. All right. So the reason for stacking all of that is that each one of those is really a form of governance, a different kind of governance to govern different things, but they're all there and they all impact Joe's life one way or another. And so does other things in Joe's life. He probably will have a boss because he works, and he probably does other things like sports and whatever. And those are all have sort of their form of governance that Joe somehow interacts with. He obviously does so daily at work, and the sports is obviously what happens there, right? So this is kind of one way of thinking about how we as individuals are governed in very, very different ways. So if we take this sort of analogy and take it to devices, and let's sort of imagine this little device here, which is a VAV. And the way I'm sort of thinking about this is that the VAV is governed by its own sort of controls. We talked about this last week. Controls is a form of governance. It's telling the VAV, telling that box to be a VAV, right? So that's a form of governance of itself. We also spoke last week about the supervisory level of governance that exists, which is in many cases what we call BMS systems, or the supervisory system, which exists. So there's a governance at that layer. I would also argue that in the future, and this is something that doesn't happen now, although I think a lot of vendors would like this, vendors would have some sort of governance sort of platforms or something where all of the devices that that vendor provides that are installed somewhere could effectively report back to that vendor. So do things that sort of at the vendor level, obviously anonymize all of the data involved in terms of the site specific stuff. But sort of so this way the vendor can actually have telemetry of how their product is actually working in the field. So that's another sort of form of governance. Facility management systems would impose some form of governance if Anno is doing the maintenance of this building, then one way or another, that system that is being used by the facility managers is somehow influencing that VAV to a small effect or large. And you can also think of things outside of the building, like utility grids, and obviously things like emergency services and other types of services. And of course, we can't forget our little friend up there that is going to be watching over us. So to me, this is kind of the various types of governance that devices and building systems is going to need to have. They're all there, and they're all there simultaneous. They're all there to do different things, right, from each other. And in a way, you can think of these governance layers as the sort of the different silos that we've talked about in past years. So that's kind of one framework to think about. The other thing I just want to add into this is that all of this doesn't just happen by magic. All of the stuff on the left happens because we have agreed and we've sort of established a whole bunch of things. We understand things like jurisdiction, mostly, right? There's still some parts of the world where that doesn't quite work as well as should be. But we understand what it is, and it's agreed in most cases. We understand how to deal with each other on a commercial basis. We've created this thing called money. And we have also social and governmental norms that we all sort of use. And all of this whole stack is based on that. So there has to be something that provides the similar sort of foundational rigor, as it were, to all the stuff on the right, the sort of the device-centric stuff. And I sort of posed that it may be the supply chain, because if you look at all of these entities, it's basically a supply chain. Right, but there are also issues like cross-domain standards because, and again, we've talked about this, the sort of cross-silo. And one of the things that Ken has been eager to talk about is that the devices are at the edge, at the very edge, and they're the thing that touches reality, right? So VAV is the thing that moves the damper so that air moves a different way, right? So it also has to deal with reality, in other words, the laws of physics. So I just want to put that up there as a way of sort of framing the different flavors of governance that's needed, and just sort of interjecting that the different flavors are most likely going to all happen simultaneously, although separate from each other. So I'm going to shut up now and open it up to the panel. Anybody want to chime in? Start?
Yeah, I'll start. So Anto, the thing that jumps out for me that's missing are the regulatory requirements for that VAV device. So right out of the gate, in most cases, it needs to have a UL listing for safety because it's an electrical device. Okay. So, and generally in our world, 916 has been the standard for energy management. But if it's going, in some cases, they want 864, which is fire standard. That means the plastic has to be rated in a certain way. And so many of the devices that are out there don't comply with 864 or haven't gone through the testing. So there's a much more limited universe of products that will comply with that. So you've got that standard. And then from as we've talked many times, you have the communication standard that the devices carry, which in many cases is BACnet. And then within BACnet, you've got to define your device. Is it ASC? Is it AAC? Is it BBC? What version of BACnet does it comply with, right? Comport to is that other word I was looking for. So,
yeah, one thing I didn't say that this diagram is comprehensive. So you've just proved that point. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. But I'm just saying, just to get into the business, if you will, of selling one, saying, hey, I want to get in the market and sell a VAV controller, right? So to be recognized as something that's going to be considered legitimate, at least in today's market, you've got to have the safety standard, you've got to have the communications defined in BACnet. Generally, in theory, you can sell a VAV controller without BACnet, but good luck, going anywhere with that. So, but then the manufacturer, and you've got the vendor piece, the vendor will put a warranty on the product, and that warranty will be tied typically to a serial number so that they can track how long has it been in the field. Right? So whether they give a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, whatever, will be tied to a serial number. And so the vendor will apply a serial number to the packaging of the device so that if there is an issue comes up, you can report on the thing, and then that serial number will tell the vendor whether it's still in warranty or not. So those are three things that immediately come up to me as kind of table stakes just to be in the game here. And another one that we've again often talk about in the communication side is things like brick or haystack or any of the tagging standards. Do you play in that world? Yes or no? Because that in turn, in my mind, would affect the supervisory FM system, even possibly the utility grid software and products that are going to want to interact with those devices. So anyway, those are my comments at this stage, at this point.
And I think I do like your analogy here, Anto, the governments as it relates to, how you operate a country, I guess, versus governments, so how you operate the systems. And to Steve's point and your point, there's a whole lot of other stuff that can go on that right-hand side, right? Not only the safety requirements like Steve was pointing out, there's also the actual owners of the building themselves, right? They have their own.
Yep.
Don't start the building on a Saturday or start the building on a Saturday because we have a sale or because there's a snow day. There's also fire modes, right? There's also, don't close all the VAVs on fire mode. And interestingly enough, of course, for those of us who've been doing BACnet, there's hierarchy here as well, right? Does a fire mode override the snow mode, right? Or et cetera, et cetera. So BACnet has actually layers of controls that you can provide priority to. One of the challenges we always have with governance, though, is who has the ultimate authority here, right? And so depending upon what country you live in, right? Here in the US, we have a particular hierarchy over the left-hand side. Different countries have different ways that they have different hierarchies. And one of the things we've got to recognize is that there is no one flavor on the left-hand side, right? And every country is different how they do that. So same thing applies to the stuff on the right-hand side. You're going to find all sorts of different hierarchies of governance, depending upon application, function, capabilities, vendor, customer, the whole thing, right? So there's different governances and priorities are going to be different city to city, country to country, application to application, people to people as well. And then the last thing, and I'll stop, is one of the challenges with governments, and again, this is why I like your analogy here, is anytime there's governance, there's always room for abuse, right? And taking it to your advantage, right? And using governance, and that applies in the right-hand side as well, right? There are folks who will, the moment you put governance in place, that's always opportunity for abuse at the end of the day. Just my thoughts.
That's interesting. Thank you, Anno. This is hierarchical, right? And you were saying that some of these could be hierarchical, and I think that's true. And that's sort of one of the points I was trying to make with this hierarchy, is that they can be hierarchical or not, and it kind of depends on what they are. And also the governance you're concerned about really depends on what problem you're trying to deal with, right? So if Joe here has lost, somebody stole his car, he's not going to, well, he probably will complain to his wife first, but he's not going to complain to North Carolina or the USA. It doesn't make sense. He's going to complain to the rally or the county at the worst case. But anyway, so it all depends. Kimon?
Yeah, just working off the hierarchy there. I think it's good to describe it like that on the left, like you said, but it's not all like that. And I would even take it a step further. If we look at the right side, there's governance at the higher level, but there's also governance at the minute level. Down at the device level, there are rules that govern that thing that's happening that could also be changing on the fly. So if you're in an emergency situation, the rules might shift completely. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic, that if we go back to this RDF triplets thing that we were talking about earlier, each device can know what its capacity is and what it can do, and who it's being told to do that by, governed, and what rule might change that. So you layer kind of a business on top of that. So it's a many-to-many relationship, which is why you end up in the cloud, and you might end up with millions of different governance rules that would be dynamic, which sounds unachievable, but if we break it down into components like that, then you can scale it. If you try and make it too rigid, then it becomes brittle, and then you have to govern that brittleness, and the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, this looks complex, but in a way, when you're thinking about this, you're probably going to be thinking about this mostly in one of those governance layers, right? Anno is probably going to be thinking about it from the FM system because that's what his role is, right? A vendor of a product, Steve, will probably be thinking about the controls and what he needs to do in the control itself. So depending on who you are, you have different roles.
No, actually, that's what I was going to say. Is that's what the problem is. If you look at the stack on the left-hand side, we've all had civics classes. We've all been watching cop shows on TV and the right to remain silent our entire lives. And we have some intuitive feeling for what the federal government does, what the state, local, county governments do. If you look at the stack on the right, we have been participating in this as an industry, but most people in the industry have no idea how the other parts of the industry work. That intuitive knowledge is not there. And I think that's a huge stumbling block for why we have so much trouble with this kind of stuff. Nobody even... I'm sorry, go ahead, Anto.
Do you actually need to understand all of the other governance, or do you just need to understand that that's there, somebody's taking care of it?
I think you need a flavor for it, because I certainly don't know any constitutional law, and I seem to get fine in life without knowing that. However, I don't think there's a decent enough understanding in our industry of people across not different components of the silo. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about how the process works, right? Does the guy that's the FM in the building know anything about how the building was spec'd?
Right.
Really? So I don't know how we bridge that, but maybe with some of these tools and some of the work that Kimon's working on, I think that we're all working towards bridging those problems to some extent. But I think that that's a chasm that we have to cross that we don't really have to cross on the left side of the diagram.
Tracy, you have thoughts on this?
No, I'm thinking about how all of this governance comes to be, right? It doesn't all get established at the same time at the beginning. There's not this big set of rules that just go and then it's done. This is an evolutionary process of things depending on time, location, circumstance, so on. So, trying to address this from a control standpoint or AI or data interoperability standpoint, what we're talking about is inserting or layering on within these kind of pillars that you've built here, I think, right? So it's difficult to talk about this all at the entire ecosystem at once, because somebody said, I don't think any individual is interacting with the entire stack here at any given point in time, right? They're just like you said, Anno's just focused on the FM stuff or whatever it might be. So, but yet we're trying to define something that, potentially impacts various levels of this here as we move forward. So
Maybe
I don't have a strong conclusion on any of this stuff. It's interesting. I'm still evolving my thinking here a little bit.
Maybe we can dig into this aspect that do we really need to understand, or how much do we really need to understand all of the governance, even if it doesn't affect us? What do you say on that, Rick?
So
going to jump to the shortcut. And I'm sorry, I'm battling with a cat that is just really regressive right now. She's demanding attention. So we were talking earlier about the magic of TTL files. And see, imagine if you could document the particular laws of physics or rules of the road or ASHRAE standards or local electric, code requirements. Imagine you could work all that into the file that describes the device or the system or the process that is in question. Imagine if the file could include enough detail to give at least the computer, but maybe also a human, some visibility to the rules of the road that are relative to that particular system, whether that's an air handler or whether it's a fan or whether it's a piece of carpet. Imagine that if the data file relative to that piece, if there was enough capacity to include the rules of governance or the rules of the road that were relative to that particular assembly or that piece of equipment or that piece of carpet. Now imagine that that file was a turtle file. You can do that. You can associate rules of governance or the rules of the road or the specifications. You can associate anything you want to now with that device or that system. And so the rules of governance or the governance types or the laws of physics can effectively be connected to the VAV box. And I know that sounds grand, it sounds ambitious or whatever, but that's what's happening with the knowledge graph capability that's coming to us. Also with the abundance of processing, storage, and communications capabilities of IT these days, you don't have to wonder what the specification was of the particular thing. You can actually have a link to it. And you can use then artificial intelligence or an agent or your own wits to query what was the design intent, what was the energy intent, what's the manufacturer's recommended maintenance, how long is this thing supposed to last, what was the engineer, who stamped it, what county was it stamped in. All of that information can be linked, and it's not crazy anymore. So that's where things are going to be going. So the governance could be just one of the items that's in the graph of the details of a particular device or system. Does that sound crazy?
Don't think so.
I think that's kind of the point here, right? That you're trying to make is, through the use of tools and mechanisms like turtle files and so forth, more and more of these governance type of items can be included in the model and attached to all of this so that a computer who can process all of this information very quickly has access to that and can utilize that for more advanced things down the road.
Without totally understanding that domain.
Right.
They can use the turtle file, they can use the knowledge graph to find out information that's relevant to them, although they're not native to that domain.
Yes.
And the beauty of the fact that everything is going to knowledge graphs, and if knowledge graphs sound like an obscure thing or whatever, it's Google, it's Facebook, it's what I sent that link last week about, with it that Netflix is going to. It's just a database architecture. It's a file type that just happens to be robust enough to be able to have relationships as part of the field type. But if it sounds like it's science fiction, it's really not. And one of you just said it. It's that the machine can now keep track of all this stuff because we have machines that are powerful enough. We have computers that are powerful enough. That have enough storage, enough processing, enough communications bandwidth to be able to go, hey, it's only going to take me a millisecond to go check what the manufacturer's spec was, so I might as well go do that because the link is right here now. Where it used to be that would have been a completely different, disconnected sort of search. So the technology to be able to link all that stuff now is entirely possible. It's not science fiction anymore.
Kimon?
Yeah, and it can be all, and it can be packaged self-describing to that thing, whether it's an error handling unit or whatever. It's not depending on some other application, whatever. It's describing what it is in a very short code. And I wrote about this the other day too, but if you imagine how 9000 in 2001 going to Jupiter, it had an instruction, make this device go to Jupiter, right? What they forgot to add is a turtle file and says, and don't kill humans along the way. So it's kind of that instruction of what are you and what are you doing? I have an engine that goes to Jupiter. I have this much thrust. It takes so much time, this much fuel. And I have all these requirements and packaged in that thing. And if it's written in an open format, that means a connection to other devices that can speak that same language doesn't have to depend on understanding that domain. It just knows that humans are in the spaceship. Don't kill them if there's another instruction that says that. So if you break it down into pieces like that, it starts to make more sense, I think. It sounds complex and big, which is the chart on the right, which it is, but breaking it down into pieces like that makes it very understandable.
Steve?
So, as I pointed out earlier about the kind of the base level requirements for the control, both from a safety and a communication standpoint, the thing that's inherent in that is, in that level of governance, is standardization and compliance enforcement. Okay, when you get above that, we start to run into things get a lot softer in terms of defined regulations, and particularly around enforcement. So when you look at on the left side, you know, whether it's a state, county, or the country, there's inherent enforcement around whatever standards or governance they create. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in our world, much less of that. So owners' requirements, yes. Does owners generally have requirements? Yes, but they're all over the map. Depends on the owner. What do they want? What awareness do they have? So the point of that Rick was making, that the information can be attained, yes. So to whatever information might be available, we can get to it, and we can construct it's almost like governance governance in our world is a unicorn each and every time, because it all.
But isn't it a unicorn also for Joe? Because your governance is different from Joe's governance.
You mean on the left? Oh, you mean for Joe? Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
on this
Yeah,
Joe, Joe.
but I'm just
Sorry.
saying, Joe's within his house. Sure, he's got unique governance. I'm not arguing that, but what I'm saying is he looks beyond himself. He looks up to Raleigh, Wake County, North Carolina, USA. He knows what he's dealing with. He can look it up, and it's consistent. Joe to Tom to Sam to Sally and so on. As long as they have a house within the context of North Carolina, they can look all that stuff up, right? And I'm just saying, in our world, it's not nearly as well defined. It's not, in most cases, many cases, it's not defined, right? So I just want to point out that the lack of regulation or standardization, and the lack of enforcement to those standards is very different environment.
Yeah,
Is it really a lack of structure?
Structure, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
I like the analogy, Steve. You're 100% right. And it doesn't matter whatever your left-hand country structure is. You know where to go. You know what forms you need. You know how to fill the forms out. The forms are clear in what they tell you. To your point, there's enforcement. You know, there's a whole enforcement structure that's put in place. And I agree. I think in our world, it's become pretty loosey goosey, right? there's a lot of, until it gets quite high in the hierarchy, there's a lot of fluffiness into who's doing what and who's responsible, and what happened when it didn't work and who's enforcing it and who's not enforcing it. Yeah, I agree, right? I mean, that's a big part of what we've got a challenge with the governance on in our world. It's just I wouldn't know where to go to say, to Jim's earlier point too about the original specification for the building and how it was supposed to operate is probably long gone and forgotten. So who's really defining what happens when a demand response comes in from the grid, or what happens when a fire mode happens and the VAV is supposed to do what, or the fact that the VAV got replaced by a non-UL listed device.
Right.
So Ken, you've been very quiet. What do you say to all of this?
I think because a lot of this we've never done before, we're kind of inventing it on the fly. And I believe that AI, as the implementer of a lot of this stuff, will also be able to ask it the questions, what it thinks of what problems not applying governance might help, and also could also suggest that some of the over governance, what it might prevent us from evolving. So I think it's just too early to tell. I believe is that we need to get on with the process. We need to start applying this stuff, and we need to learn what the ramifications of that are. And I believe AI is probably one of the, and its agents and its groups of agents are probably one of the solutions.
I went to the same point there. Sorry, Anto, I went to the same point there, Ken, about I'd love to go to a ChatGPT or Claude and go, here's all the specs and everything, and here's my BMS and all my BACnet stuff, and here's all my controls. Please tell me what the hell is going on. And who's controlling what. And just like I do with the 3 other things that I've got running here day to day every 10 minutes. I'd love to go to some agent in my BMS, or not my BMS, but some other system that says, here, interrogate all my systems and tell me what's in compliance, what's not in compliance.
You can do that with the PA build right now.
Vision, right?
And you can use AI to ask the PAE building exactly those questions, because the manufacturer spec, because the specs, because all the devices, everything has been normalized to RDF turtle file. And
yeah, I really need to get into that building and understand what's going on. You build something like that, I'd put it in our tech stack immediately.
It's through the magic of modern technology, right? But we've been talking about, or I've been talking about, Kimon's been talking about turtle files, and I'm talking about the PAE building, and we really have been normalizing everything to RDF and to what turned out to be turtle files, and AI might be useful in being able to watch the creation of an ontology, but I think we feel pretty strongly that humans have to be involved in the actual creation of the ontology. AI has not been able to make sense out of enough things to be able to create an ontology. Now, once the ontology is created, like or the RDF file is, or the RDF format is created, whether it's 223 or BACnet to RDF. Once those are created, now AI can be turned loose, like we're doing at the PAE building. AI can be turned loose on all these now common data architectures, because AI loves it some RDF, it loves it some turtles up and down. So once you get to that point, you can use AI, but trying to use AI to create the ontology or to create the triples is perhaps a bridge too far. But but I always love it when I see Joel Bender in the audience, and he's, I think, the author of the CT addendum to the ASHRAE standard for moving BACnet to RDF, which is TTL file. And that's going to be a huge, it's going to be a huge help to making what have been sort of standalone, BACnet components, sure, BACnet files, BACnet objects, BACnet devices, whatever. It's all been described in BACnet, but now that BACnet can be, I don't know what the right word is to describe it, but migrated, or we're using the word to say that BACnet description is being made over or makeover to turn it into RDF. Now AI can get at it easier, and it can get at it the same way it gets at the IFCs or the BIM data that's in what Kimon's describing. And so again, the standardization of the data architecture then allows for the AI to be able to go do its thing.
I think another thing is this evidence collecting evidence electronically and talking to the building and creating a history of, how did we maintain the temperature way back when we had a thing called the comfort factor, and we calculate that. But I think that's what Gregory's talking about, and he's suggesting that because we have all of this data that we're basically moving along, and we can collect basically a validation of our indoor air quality over the last month, and we have the ways and means of doing that economically. Basically, once we can do that, then that can be reapplied, and we can stick AI on it to figure out if there's any evidence or any governance issues that we are doing. We have some code requirements that we have to maintain various temperatures, humidities. That's just an example, but there's a whole bunch of, and energy could fall into that same performance. So as we start, this building becomes a data machine. The building itself could start to create governance based on the actual use of things like energy, comfort. Are we achieving our goals? And basically quantifying that we need to do something better, or that in fact our strategies are not what they should be, and there are governance issues that are causing us problems. So anyway, it's a whole different way of thinking of it. Once you get that data flow going, which I think I applaud what they're doing at the PAE building, and also applaud what Kimon and the group is doing, some of the stuff they're doing, Skycentrics and that. We're kind of opening this all up and basically turning it into a virtual world. As we turn it into a virtual world, we go into that world, we can then use virtual tools to help us in a way that we probably haven't quite perceived yet. So I'm not sure of the solution, but because I started and grew up in the internet era, I saw that happening. I saw things happening that I couldn't imagine were going to happen. And I think that's going to happen in this world just faster.
Okay, so we are coming up to the top of the hour, so we need to start to wrap. Looking for someone to do a brief wrap up. Jim, could you?
Yeah, I think that, we've spent the last month talking about governance. I think we've made some good progress. And what I'm most interested in is that, we keep coming back to some of the new innovations that are going on in terms of BIM, RDF, to document these things. But I think some things that were said today are also very important, which is the left side of the diagram has grown up in an evolutionary fashion over a long period of time. The right side of the diagram is not as locked down. It's changing more frequently, and it's less well understood, and frankly is not well governed at this point, and really never has been. So the question is how can we apply some of these newer tools and techniques, some of the work that this group has been working on for several years, like 2525 and other things to start to bring the disorder on the right-hand side under control. And I think AI and a number of the tools we're working on will be a great leap forward in that area.
That's a wonderful wrap up. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone, and audience as well, the attendees. We'll get the video up tomorrow or Wednesday, and I hope everybody has a great week. Bye, all.
Hey, George.
Anto, can you hang on for
Bye.
a quick second?
Bye. Sorry?
Anto, can you hang on for a quick second?
Yeah, I will. I will.
Okay, thanks. So,
Hang on a minute. I haven't found my recording thing.